TVC News correspondent Adewale joins us live. Ayo, what's happening where you are now?
Yes, voting has stopped now, and they're about to start counting the votes. In the morning, we have large turnout of voters at Adewale. I visited two local councils, Adewale South and North, and now most of the polling units voting have stopped, and they are about to be counting the votes the people have cast. So for now, people are waiting for the votes to be counted and sorted by INEC ad hoc staff.
Adewale was where the PDP candidate voted earlier. He pointed to the fact that certain card readers did not work. How did it play out eventually?
No, the card readers in most of the places visited in Adewale worked perfectly. In his own polling unit, there was a little bit delay before he was able to cast his vote, but the card readers in his polling unit worked very well. And in other places visited, the card readers are functioning perfectly. And I can report to you that in Adewale, we didn't experience card reader problems, but just because they couldn't handle it, maybe some of the ad hoc staff, they couldn't handle it very well, but they function very well in Adewale, the card readers used by ad hoc staff.
It's the same feeler from almost everywhere we have gotten reports from in Osun. But let me just run you through some of my checklist. What is your experience with the vote buying in Adewale?
Well, I think INEC should be commended this time around because they made sure that there's no inducement. We have security men around the place, and I couldn't see anybody with money trying to bribe the electorate. The electorate just came out to cast their ballot for the candidate of their choice. Vote buying and inducement did not work this time around with what I observed in most of the places visited for the election.
Apparently, vote buying did not take place at the polling units. That we know for sure now. But let's talk about security in Adewale. Was there any case of arrest?
No, nobody was arrested. We have every percent of security personnel. We have policemen, civil defense officials, Federal Road Safety Corps members. They were all in the different polling units to ensure that there's no breakdown of law and all that. So it was the election was conducted peacefully in most of the areas visited. There was no violence in any of the polling units. People did not harass anybody. They were not harassed. They were free to cast their ballot for the candidate of their choice.
You mentioned earlier that voting has ended where you are. Take me through the role of the voters. Are voters still there checking out the sorting, and what exactly is taking place now?
Yes, the voters are not ready to leave this place. They want the INEC officials to count the vote in their presence. Once the votes are counted, once they count the vote, they will leave. But for now, they are hanging around everywhere, waiting for the vote to be sorted, and after that, the vote will be counted. So they are not ready to leave. They are waiting to monitor everything to know how it will end.
I can see it's a fair weather there. Has that been the situation from when this exercise kick-started and in every other places you have visited?
Can you come again with the question?
I'm asking about the weather. I said I can see that the weather is fine where you are right now, but was that the situation from when this exercise started?
No, in the morning there was a little bit, the weather was not friendly, but in the afternoon everything changed. We now a good weather, everywhere is peaceful, and the weather is also okay for now.
It's all right. I guess we're going to just peg it there and keep a tab on what is happening there. You mentioned that sorting and, of course, collation is going to be next. And we'll be back with you, Ayodele in Adewale. Osun State. Amazingly, it's been good reports all the way, and perhaps INEC is going to have a pass mark this time. But they say, just like they say in football, it's not over until it's over. I mean, anybody can score in the 90th minute or even in extra time. And there are people who will tell you that this is even the most sensitive part of any election, that if any rigging is going to take place, this is when it's going to take place. Now, in Ekiti, we saw how it play out. The fact that social media is now contending with conventional media. Everyone has a phone. Everyone has an idea of what the figures are. I mean, some politicians even got very desperate, had to announce results before INEC did. What role do you see all stakeholders play, you know, as we count down to the official release of results in Osun State?
It's patience. All stakeholders must be patient in this process, and they must recite to their hard work and of course to faith. If you have not worked much, you don't have to expect much. And if you have tried as much as possible to cover the terrain, automatically your pedigree will determine your faith.
That's right.
And the security operative also must be very vigilant. Like you said, these are desperate hours now. They must be very vigilant. The INEC official must be very, 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 very cautious. They must be very professional, and they must be very peaceful in their approach, because somebody can infuriate you in order to mirror that particular process. You saw what happened between Jega and Orubebe.
That's right.
If not that Jega was highly matured and was very calm,
that's true.
it would have just truncated the whole process. So this is a time where everybody must be very, very quiet, very watchful, and make sure that the thing goes without being truncated.
Now, when you say watchful, because one of such terms we use is protect your votes. The politicians will say, when you are done voting, stay there. And now, how does an elector protect his or her vote?
In the first place, you don't walk away afterwards. Many persons do not understand that the first half of, electing anybody into office is after you're voted. And your vote can only count if you demonstrate that intent by looking, very keenly at the processes that results after you're voted. Because if you look at it, many persons who lose election do not even lose election when people go to vote. They lose election when they don't pay attention from the point of voting to the point of transporting to the point of eventually having it, put together and eventual announcement. A lot of things happen. I listened to Mr. Agbaje yesterday, the resident electoral commissioner, and of course I also listened to one other person who is a civil society convener. He mentioned the need for transparency, even when you're bringing the very sensitive materials, that you have to involve virtually every stakeholder so that the transparency will not be questioned.
That's right.
And I think it is very essential to also deploy the same measure when people have voted to ensure that every person who is a stakeholder, maybe party agents, maybe people who are to monitor the processes, are able to move maybe together in another vehicle from the point of having put things together to where they take it to the maybe electoral office where everything will be eventually collated. It is in doing this that we won't have this court case, because there is hardly an election you have in this country where you do not have people eventually go to the court to say that certain things have happened. If you look at the one in Ekiti, for instance, elections have taken place. It has been announced. But it even took INEC some time for them to even hand over the materials that will be submitted as exhibits to the court. So all of those things that often happen must be what INEC has to divorce itself from, so that we don't have the processes questioned.
So he made mention of something very important, the fact that most of our elections still end in the tribunal. And it appears that what an election, a free and fair, credible election, means different things to different people. If a party wins an election now, they most times will say, oh, it was free, it was fair. But then the other party who that doesn't win has another story to tell. How do we, upgrade the system to a point where it is clear that someone wins, and then there is no even reason to go to the court?
Well, if you do that, that means there will not be any reason to have a tribunal. or our justice system. You understand? Let it be there. If all of these things throw themselves up, it also helps to test the competency of our tribunal and our justice system. All of it is a learning process. You leave it as such. But I think what we also need to do is go beyond the Americans. You see, when they were voting, they didn't actually see that path where another country will interfere with their own processes. And if they had thought about it, perhaps they would have built a defensive, you understand, system in order to prevent it. Now that our transmission is going to go through MICA, as long as it's going to go through MICA, you have to also be very, very careful to make sure that nobody tampers with it. Somebody could tamper away with your laptop. At the point of you transmitting, is already there to tamper with your figure. So we must also have very good heads to monitor the airspace so that as the transmission is going, there will not be an interference. Otherwise, you will go back to your tribunal.
I want to believe that's why we have a collation center. So whenever it transmitted, there will also be the returning officer.
It will cause confusion.
Okay.
Great confusion.
That's right. That's
By the time what you have transmitted does not tally with what is there, confusion
but the thing would now be the spreadsheet
that
each officer comes with. But then let's look at the implication of going to the court. Because from the tribunal, you're probably going to an appeal court, and then it takes a while before you get the verdict of the Supreme Court. As some would say that has a way of distracting the new administration from focusing on its primary responsibility of governance. In Osun, for instance, Adewale did not get the mandate until 2010.
But it was in office.
I mean, no. Yes, the other governor was in office, but has been in court for 3 years. That's just a year before the end of a whole administration. That sounds like divided attention. So
the point is, that is why you must win election fair and square. If indeed the party that Aregbesola ousted indeed won the election, Aregbesola was tenacious because he knew he won the elections. And the particular exhibits brought showed clearly that he won the election. Are we there? Now, we're not talking about his performance. We're talking about the election held and the fact that he remained tenacious until he got what he wanted from the court.
That's right.
I have to say here that people must understand that you cannot always want to force yourself on the people. The people must always have the power to decide the person they want. If, for instance, your strides are okay, if, for instance, you're the most intelligent, but the people feel maybe you're too egoistic to represent them, and as such, they don't want you in office, you have to accept your fate, because public relationship is also very important in getting into office. And if you look at it, for instance, the Americans, as we speak, voted essentially for Donald Trump. And whatever he gives them, according to what they often tell us, the people get the leader that they deserve.
Yeah, they voted for him. If you're not paying attention to the Russian, the allegations of Russian
the point is, let me say this, because the world is watching. If there is any governance in the history of modern democracy that has influenced, interfered in sovereign democracies, it is the United States of America.
So you're saying that they got what they deserved?
Well, I wouldn't know if I'm to put it that way, but the point remains that it appears as if what they claim to have been experts at doing eventually is hurting them. Because if you look at it, in every democracy, go to Latin America, you have a hand of the United States of America, in fact, even come to Africa. I'm saying here that if Donald Trump had been elected by the powers that be in the U.S., Donald Trump got to power spending his own money. Donald Trump got to power. It was at the outset of even the nomination, it was laughed to scorn. But this man defied the odds. This man told them, I may not have held an elective office. I have my money. As a matter of fact, he even spent far less than Hillary Clinton spent. So when people thought he wasn't going to get it, it's from the ridiculous to the rostrum. It's from the ridiculous to the great state. So I'm saying here...
apparently, he won by the Electoral College. I'm not sure he got the popular vote.
The point is, whatever Hillary Clinton took home the greater vote from the general vote, but since the Electoral College is part of the process of coming to power in the U.S., Eventually, Donald Trump got, because even the people that constitute the Electoral College would well have given it to Hillary Clinton. They had the alternative of Hillary Clinton, and why did they not give it to her? That's a question that may be answered next year.
Let's take it back to Nigeria for a bit. You know, we started by talking about winning elections in courts. That indeed has a way of turning our attention to how much money we have spent, the kind of, you know, time we have wasted at the polls, and then the kind of money that's also being spent in courts, because they will tell you that lawyers are always excited when election results are released and there are divisions. They know that it's time to make some money. But this now has culminated into staggered elections in Anambra, in Ekiti. That's why we're having Osun election in 2018. Would you say this staggered elections has been more of a blessing to us because now we have more policemen to deploy?
I won't say more of a blessing, but again, the people's mandate must be obeyed, and the people's will must be embraced. If people have voted for a particular person and their will is subverted, I think it's better for us to go to court and spend more time than go to war. So what we need to do is that the judicial system must have a timeline. Whatever election petition that is brought forward, or cases as the case may be, must be determined within a space of this particular time. And it must not go beyond 12 months. If it goes beyond 12 months, it's going to distort the calendar. And it is quite possible to listen to cases and resolve it within 3 months, maximum. It is very possible. Look at the CJ right now. I think there was a directive given that they should not entertain any electoral cases to the extent that they will now pass, I'm trying to look for the legal terminology to use now, in order for you to now start causing trouble within the electoral system, because lawyers are fond of that, you understand? But if the judicial calendar is structured towards the pattern that any electoral case from tribunal to listening to the case and everything, let's achieve it in 6 months, guys. It is very, very possible.
Now, there's need also for winners in elections to be magnanimous in victory and losers being gracious in defeat.
You'll be magnanimous if the process is genuine.
Yeah, exactly. We saw that play out in Ekiti, for instance. According to the APC, they don't believe that that election was free and fair.
Which one is that?
The one that held before, that held in 2014. And Kayode Fayemi came out to say, well, if this is the will of the people, so be it. There are some who would say that that also played out in 2015 when President Muhammadu Buhari emerged as president. The PDP, we didn't see much of that play out in court. Would you say that is also a matter of maturity on part of the candidates to look at the tide and also consider the implication on the economy of the state, for instance, and the concentration of whoever wins an election?
In the first place, he was looking for the word ex parte motion that should not be granted forthwith. So I just want us to have that sorted. You can't grant ex parte motion forthwith. And I think there's also a timeline to conduct elections related issues. Now, coming to what you've asked me, I think all of the problems we have when elections are on stems from lack of understanding of occupying leadership offices. In the first place, leadership has inherent values. Leadership is participatory, it's a group process. And when you talk about leadership, oftentimes, it is not about one man. It's about wanting to define with the assistance of many others. Of course, you are the leader of many others of like minds. If people understood that occupying leadership offices is representation and not about one man controls all, then you wouldn't want to kill yourself over it.
That's right.
Then, if we look at the flip of the coin, the challenge we have here is because leadership has taken another coloration. In the first place, we're talking about the processes and the monies involved before you get into offices.
It makes it a do-or-die affair.
It has to be a do-or-die affair if your entire life savings are to go in an election. Nobody would want such resources to go with the wind. I go back to point square one, because there's even a square one and there's a point square one. That is, you've not even attained zero. And that is the problem here. And again, we come to INEC as the parent body that must oversee elections.
Well, interestingly, there is an electoral law that stipulates the limit of money that can be spent, you know, before an election.
But what I'm saying is, time and again, the limits have been surpassed and nobody has been sanctioned. Then how will you even sanction, for instance, people if the person who appoints the electoral body's chairperson is the ruling government? And that is where we have to even look at the leadership of INEC. For instance, the president will participate in an election the same way the president participated in the 2015 election. Who appointed or who appoints the leadership of INEC also matters. INEC will remain very toothless as anything that doesn't need dentition for anything, until whoever appoints the leadership of INEC is not even the sitting president. If that is done, you can have INEC exercise a measure of independence, such that some of these things we see as infractions are very well corrected through punitive measures.
Let me quickly bring Ayodele in here. Is it a matter of who appoints? Because Buhari did not appoint Jega, and Jega led an election that brought in an opposition the first time since the emergence of democracy in Nigeria.
You see, I come from a school of thought that believes that you must groom people in order to take charge of whatever strata of human development that you have. Even if the sitting president appoints a credible individual, he does not have power over him to the extent that he will subject his thinking to his wills and caprices. And that is what happened.
Even though we have seen that played out.
And that is what happened during a Mr. Jega's era.
Okay.
The Jonathan administration actually appointed Mr. Jega, but Jega in himself is a different being that is very objective. Jega in himself is very fearless. If Jega was to be some people, just mere intimidation, he will swing to the other side.
So you're saying that are we going to have to depend on the possibility of an individual's character, or we just follow his way of giving INEC the independence?
In the kind of system that you have in Nigeria, that was why I said initially that if bird learn how to fly without wings, then the hunters will learn how to shoot without missing. Look, we must develop a solution for our local peculiarities. The peculiarity in Nigeria is different. It's not ideal. It's a different peculiarity. So we have to think out of the box to look at solutions to it. And that is why I've said that in sensitive positions, we must look at people who have a level of independent mind that is true and very objective. Now, when you have them, no matter how you try to stereotype them, that objectivity in them will come to play. You cannot wishy-washy or swing them around. We need them in the judiciary. We need them in the police echelon. We need them in the army. We need them in the health sector.
Do you think we have them now in the leadership of INEC?
We have a lot of them. One of them died recently, Professor Abubakar Momo. That is one of them. And we have so many of them out there. But can we spot them? And if we spot them, can we engage the system to the extent that we throw them up? If we can, then the media and civil society has a lot to do. You actually push the regime to the extent that a lot of things that they are doing right today are fragment of your hard work. And that can still be done. It's not that the Nigerian people are helpless. We are not helpless. But we need somebody to converge their thoughts, you understand, and strength together, like we did in June 12. Whoever thought that the Nigerians could face the police, could face the army, you understand, regardless of the weapon that they had, and they could concertedly push their struggle to the extent that the June 12 was announced, and Abiola was announced as the winner of that elections. You understand? So we need a convergent point or a convergent platform that can help to ginger everybody to focus on the right direction.
You know, the anathema of all of this is that INEC's name starts with independent. And so bearing in mind that independence is pivotal to the function of that commission. We have seen INEC conducted some elections where the ruling party did not win. But what we haven't seen yet is CX, you know, the
State Independent
which is also supposed to be independent. Oftentimes when the local government elections hold, it is the sitting government, I mean the sitting party, that takes almost all the seats.
Well, it comes back to what I mentioned earlier, that if indeed we want to have institutions that function divorced from the whims and caprices of the powers that be, then the process or the procedures towards, you know, the emergence of the leadership must be seen as very transparent.
That's right.
I have to say here emphatically that Jega did what he did. But do we always have to wait for individuals that are fearless, that are resolute, that are selfless for us to really achieve that? In the history of this country, Jega was the first man that actually used vice chancellors across board, that used people who have built a career and know that immediately you mess up, you are gone forever. And even the caliber of persons he chose for the elections were such that could not have allowed their images to be tarnished. If you did that, you know that you are just a gunner. Let me use that word. But we have to come back to institutions. Individuals come and go. Every government office has outlived every individual. By implication, the institutions which you know will outlive people must then be strengthened. Such as, for instance, let me go back to the US. Donald Trump, in one of his, his usual manner, was deporting some set of people. There was a court injunction given. The plane had to make a turn back to the US to drop those people. That is a very functional institution. And I have to say here that we must try as much as we can to replicate such institution. It is why I'm saying here that for INEC and even state independent electoral commissions to be seen as independent, the processes through which you allow the leadership emerge must be divorced from the governors and from the president. The intentions are there, or else people will continue to find fault. If Jega hadn't done what, for instance, if we went back to maybe the 1993 elections, and we look at the leadership of the Electoral Commission then, what happened? An election was won, the Electoral Commission chairman went into hiding whilst it was being announced. All of such things would not have happened if the person who appointed was not the man who had the power. So I think it is very good for us to build health institutions by initiating procedures or perhaps evolving legislations that will allow the leadership emerge, divorced from the person who holds sway at the center.
And perhaps it will take a lot of restructuring to get to that point, because there's a lot of political implication. The question now is, who amends the law? Are the legislators ready to make this fly and all of that? But let's get back to Osun State. You know, we were talking earlier about the conduct of electorate now that voting, you know, is over in most of the places in Osun. There is the use of social media. Which, you know, the National Assembly attempted to venture into this a while ago, and they got got a very, very aggressive response from the Nigerian community. How should this media be used at such a time like this? There are certain things, for instance, that wouldn't fly on the conventional media. But on social media, it's easy. You could just type anything. You could just, that's where fake news really, it's been peddled.
Well, we should be thankful for social media. If not that, a lot of information wouldn't have been flown around to the extent that people will have it, either to use it for positive end or negative as the case may be. But I would say that the only way we can reduce it, if we have popular discussions like this on popular platforms like yours and several other smaller, you know, grouping platform and all of these things, we can set agenda. That's right. Set agenda for us to discuss about it. And the more people know the negativity in what they do and how it affects us as a people, affects us as a nation, there's high tendency for them to switch the other way. But if we tend to just use news media like the electronic and print media alone, we'll be depriving a lot of our people from getting this at just a push of a button. Because of course you and I know how much a paper costs now. Right. And you know how much it takes for you to buy a generator to charge, I mean to watch TV and all of these things. You could just charge your telephone and the information is still there. Right. Until you delete it. So social media has really helped us a lot. And the nooks and crannies that some of your cameras cannot get to at real time, social media will bring it out for you to discuss about it and expand it and also take your focus down in there. So social media for us is a good thing. How did you end SARS? It was the social media. How did you restructure the Nigerian police? It's the social media. So you must set agenda to use social media to restructure this country and make a lot of governors be accountable for the money they receive. And of course, National Assembly. If you look at the social media expert in India, for instance, and even in Russia, a lot of their representatives go in with their phone and just get distracted by illicit things. I saw it when the camera zoomed in and picked a legislator watching porn in India and in Russia. And automatically, the constituency voted them out. So we must use social media to redirect our affairs in this country.
No doubt social media has helped in citizen journalism. You know, he mentioned the NSAS, the hashtag NSAS, and the kind of ripple effect it had even to the top echelon of authority. But then how do we regulate? Because it's more or less competing with the traditional media. That is where people, it's a go-to now for people when they wake up in the morning to find out what's happening. It's easy to just Google and say, Osun decides, and then you want to just swallow all the information that comes at you. How do we regulate such that it does not become a platform for hate speech, fake news, that has the capacity of inciting violence?
I think individually, you must have that sense of responsibility. It may be difficult, I must admit, to have everybody come under the umbrella of being properly regulated, because we are in a free society, as it were.
That's right.
And the foundations of social media in itself is freedom. For many people who do not know, it is your opportunity or your gateway to reach people, diverse set of people across the world, without hindrance. Two things now. First, the owners or operators of social media must evolve strategy for giving people access to their respective platforms. And I think it is called something that has to do with responsibility act or use of the social media. They could call it some name or the other. Now, for you to have a social media account, or for those who have a social media account, they could have 10-point agenda for using social media as a review, without which, if you don't click on that button and take responsibility, they deny you access. Because for us to have access to the likes of Facebook and WhatsApp, it is simply because those who own it have given us open access to it. They could also make it closed access by letting us have a review of the use. 7 points, 10-point agenda, this is it. Then on our part, I think the leadership of the country has a lot to do, because the trust factor has gone through the windows. The faith factor has also been badly affected. If the people have faith in the processes that actually administer their issues or their affairs, I think to a great extent, anytime the government comes and says, please let us do this, people fall in line. For instance, look at what the lawmakers did. The lawmakers, of all the resolutions they would have raised, it is to prevent, and it even comes from a complete lack of understanding. I watched the sessions, I read different kind of materials, and I realized that the people who even initiated this particular social media bill back then don't even have about 40% of even what the social media does. So that's an anomaly. So first, the people who have the responsibility to legislate must have a grasp of what they do. Then they must come to terms with the fact that they have lost a lot of the trust fabric of the people, such that the people will feel that you want to do this for us, yes, we agree. A lot of persons are in offices, for instance, and they really are not the people those in their constituencies want to represent them. That's a fact. And that is why I want to say here, when the issues of direct, indirect, or consensus as measures for the primaries come up, a lot of people are agitated. As a matter of fact, there's a particular lawmaker, I think in Yobe or Borno, that never visited his constituency since he got to Abuja. He went there close to election. They almost kidnapped him. He escaped by the whiskers. So the persons will go back to Abuja, they'll conduct elections, and for the records, they manipulate such elections, the person emerge again. So if you look at the social media has a great deal of advantage to offer, and what we have to do is to remedy all I have said from the angles I've mentioned. First, we have to restore faith. We have to try as much as possible and rebuild trust and faith in the people we represent. And on the other hand, the owners of the social media platform must create a platform for review so that people will be responsible.
Well, if you just joined us, you're watching Osun Votes. We have our eyes on Osun State, where electorates have gone out to exercise their franchise in the way of voting for their candidates of choice in the ongoing governorship election. We have feelers from Ila, Osogbo, Owode, Ilesha. Quite a number of them are reporting a relatively peaceful experience in the ongoing poll. Of course, some of them also are of the opinion that this perhaps has been way better than what we have experienced previously. Reports of early arrival of electoral materials, of electoral officers in different parts of Osun. We have also seen a fantastic role played by the security operatives to battle the challenge of vote buying, which took a totally amazing dimension in the previous election in Ekiti State. Now, don't forget that INEC told us earlier that it was going to reorganize the polling booths and ensure that voters do not get there with their phones, so that they won't be able to capture exactly which party or candidate they have voted for. The Deputy Inspector General also made mention of the fact that 6 security operatives will man each polling booth, and it's been fantastic all the way. But these are critical times in elections, and we're hoping that security will be in top gear to ensure that the sorting, the collation, as the case may be, will also be held under these fantastic conditions. In a short while, we'll also be getting to the field to find out what's happening at the moment. But I have Ayodele, Adewale, as well as Adeni Kono in the studio here with me. Thank you very much for staying the course.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's talk about the need to get the right and most competent candidates, from our parties, because that's very important. Some would tell you that what we have is just choosing the better of the, 2 or 3 devils, because the really competent people don't have their way in the political structures that matter. What we have now is either consensus, direct or indirect. There are some who will tell you that all of these options are still under the very firm grasp of some political powers that be. How do you react to that?
Well, for me, society has to be blamed for that because every one of these aspirant or candidate actually live within the society. And if the society itself is structured in such a way that they don't care about what is going on, then there's a problem. And if that problem emanates, and we have a part of society that is structured in a way that it tends to bring entertainment, bring news X, Y, Z, then that part of society that have propped it up must also help. I've looked at some of your documentaries, like this Awakon. He went as far as discovering one small boy.
That's right.
And I saw from your view, they started discovering some kids that have done very, very well. You understand? Now, we can use this medium to project all of the aspirants. It's possible, very possible, all of the aspirants to people, because perhaps the controllers of power in many of these political parties don't have in-depth knowledge about these people. The Bible also says that you have devils in sheep clothing. They come as purists, but inside of them, they are very Luciferic in thinking. And they are also very satanic in grabbing, they pilfer all of the things that they tend to touch. You understand? But if the knowledge is brought to fore and people know who they are, automatically they fizzle away. So we must help society, help the political party, the controllers, to bring the past of these people, what they do, and their current, you understand, and their aspiration to bear. It is very Herculean. It's going to be very Herculean. But again, we can break it into segments and help those people who decide on the fate of the processes.
We'll be back on that particular discussion, but let's get some feelers now. Residents of Osun State have expressed their satisfaction at the peaceful conduct of the governorship election. They are confident that anyone who wins today's election would be the true choice of the people. TVC News spoke to a cross-section of voters who commended the Independent Electoral Commission for a job well done.
The orderliness is encouraging. I'm quite impressed with the turnout. And but like as I've always mentioned, the people of Osun State, they are Moluabi people. They are very peaceful people.
Even you can see now that everybody is well arranged, the photo is okay, everything is all right, no problem whatsoever.
I must honestly say that the process is fantastic. The process has been very, very easy and has been very, very fine. People are peaceful and the election is going on smoothly. So at the end of the day, we are very positive that whoever is elected today is the choice of the people.
Fine, so far it has been very, very peaceful. Though they came here very, very late. They came around past 7. And the voting started 8:18 a.m. But so far, so good. It has been very, very peaceful.
We have been here since 7 o'clock in the morning, and the processing started around 8 o'clock. And everything go on smoothly. There's no any problem.
We started from the 7:35, so we're starting everything 8 o'clock. So well, there's no problem.
We started, everything is okay. The card reader is working perfectly. Everybody is okay. No fighting, no violence, no distraction. We are okay, and everybody come out to vote.
I think with what I've seen so far, I think the election is peaceful, and it's kudos to INEC. They've been able to achieve another success in this election, especially in the area I've covered this morning, because I've left from this unit to check on other unit, and I've seen they've been able to do everything perfectly.
Apparently, some very, very good reports from electorate and those who participated in the ongoing exercise in Osun. It's not over yet, and we're looking forward to having more of these continue even as the collation exercise draws closer. I haven't. I understand the senior correspondent Femi Akonde is in Ila, in Osun State, and has some updates for us. Hello, Femi. Hello, Femi. What's the update from Ila? Okay, I understand that Femi Akonde is now in Ikiru in Osun State. Femi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, what's the update in Ikiru where you are right now?
Well, voting is still on at this polling unit. Just a handful of voters are yet to cast their vote, and they are waiting under the scorching sun to cast their vote. Hopefully, they will get their turn very soon. But it's already way past the official close of vote. You know, the voting is supposed to end at 2 p.m. according to the INEC regulation. But it's still permissible for these ones to vote, because they have been on the line up until 2 p.m. when the voting officially ended. So they're still allowed to cast their vote. It is when they have all cast their vote that then the sorting and the counting will start. That's the situation around here.
It's indeed a sunny weather. You even have to use a face cap. And then I'm wondering what the electors are going through on that particular queue. But what was your experience moving from Ila to Ikiru? What did you take notice of as regards the movements of people and operation of security personnel?
Yeah, so I just noticed that.
Hello, Femi, are you there? Femi, I wanted to know what you observed moving from Ila to Ikiru, the movement of people and the operation of security personnel.
I noticed that people are clustered around particular areas, and of course those areas are the voting areas, the polling units. People are gathered around there in small groups, talking about the election, talking about the whole process, talking about a likely outcome. You know, this has dominated talking points around from Ila up to Iragbiji and now to Ikiru, places where I have monitored. But in most of these areas, some places voting has ended and people are just waiting on the sidelines for the sorting and the counting to take place. And in some other places, voting is still ongoing. Also here, as you can see, voting is still ongoing, but just a few people are just here, and they will all cast their votes soon, hopefully, and then the sorting and counting will then proceed.
Give us a picture of what the roads are like. Do we have roadblocks? Are there policemen or soldiers manning these blocks?
Yes, on the major roads, like on the highways, where there are checkpoints, there are roadblocks there where the military men and even the police officers, the mobile police officers, stop motorists and inquire why they are on the road at that time. those that are on election duty are allowed to go through, and those that don't have any business being on the road at that time are returned back to their houses, or they are just denied, they are not allowed to pass through. But on smaller roads, like link roads like this one, we see people on motorbikes moving from one place to the other, and of course most of these motorbikes are also used to convey people to their polling units, and even some politicians, party agents, we have noticed that making use of the motorbikes to get from one place to the other, of course, to get information about the whole election. Well, so far movement has been restricted, but I've noticed that movement of motorbike has not been largely restricted.
Have you experienced any form of arrest of defaulters in this exercise?
Well, I noticed one at Ilaro, but you know, the police officers didn't tell us exactly what happened. We just saw two guys standing, and then policemen walked up to them. What transpired, what they said to them, we don't know. But just that these men were moved into a police bus that was waiting, and then the bus sped off, drove off with them in it. I asked the police officer what was their offense, why were they taken away. You know, he just said, well, he can't disclose for now. That's the only thing I have noticed. But so far, we have not seen any breakdown of law, and other people have behaved themselves well, especially around the voting areas. And the security men have also been able to prevail on some people. We have seen some, of course, isolated situations of fracas, some little quarrelings, but the security operatives have been able to prevail on them to ensure that everything is calm, to calm frayed nerves. But so far, everything is under control, and I would say that the security operatives have their hands on the situation here.
Apparently, the people voting right now must have been on the queue before 2 p.m. How long more do you see this exercise take, especially where you are right now?
Well, yes, well, there's already a security man here that's monitoring to ensure that no one joins this queue again. So these are less than, from what my eyes can see, I would say let's say less than 20 voters just waiting to cast their vote. So let's say give and take, it will take about let's say 30 minutes or 30 to 45 minutes, and they will all, because for one person it takes approximately 5 minutes to get verified with the card reader, get your ballot paper, and then thumbprint and drop your ballot in the ballot box. It takes 5 minutes maximum. So if you multiply that with the number of people here, let's say it's going to take another 45 minutes for all these people to be cleared. That's when they have cast their vote, and then the sorting and counting will then take place.
I can only see the people on the queue. Where you are exactly, those who have already exercised their franchise, have they left that venue completely, or they are hanging around somewhere?
No, they are still here. I would like my cameraman Richard, I would like my cameraman to pan to the right, to the left, I beg your pardon, so that our viewers can see some of the people that have cast their vote. They are still here. They are waiting for the sorting, the counting and sorting to take place. They are here to monitor the whole process. You can see them waiting patiently. Richard, you can still pan, let our viewers see some of them. Yes, they are waiting patiently for the whole process, the voting to officially end, and then the sorting and counting will then start.
Interesting. Senior correspondent Femi Akonde, it's been a long day, but the day just kick-started for you, because we don't know how long the collation will take. And you can't leave until we have results.
We're here all the way.
All right, keep your eye on, and we'll be back with you for more updates subsequently. I wouldn't know if giving, some food and water to these people would also count for vote buying. At least they are done voting, and then some people should just provide some welfare.
I didn't find that in the Electoral Act 2010.
It's just
I didn't find that there. But the point is, I've seen it happen where people who have houses around where polling centers
provide some
they just, maybe biscuits and some water. But I think for you to go to any elections in this part, you should be armed with your snacks and drinks, especially if you want your vote to count, which is very important. They've been there since morning, as early as, maybe some even go there, maybe as early as 6 a.m.
Don't you think the process is rather hectic? I'm wondering who's going to have the time to devote a full day to such an exercise like this?
All over the world is like that.
Yeah.
It's like that all over the world.
But do they have to wait to... Because what is different now is that people have already voted. They have gone through the rigor of voting. But they also now have a mandate to wait to ensure that the figure that eventually comes out...
It's not magical. I'll give you an instance. The American embassy, through the consulate, they normally invite some of us yearly to... They call it night vigil. Okay. To come and observe their election and all. So you know that from about 8 o'clock till around 5 a.m. Wow. You're going to be seated there just watching the American elections and all of that. The only interval we have, once in a while they bring food to eat and all. For me, when I go for election and some other people, we turn it to a carnival. After voting, we have to sit down there. So if you can afford it, you buy bottled water. Okay, that's after the vote. Okay. You buy bottled water, you buy gala, even granuts. Everybody sit down, you start eating.
At that time, you were a politician?
I am still a politician.
Okay, so at that time, well, I'm not sure you'll be able to do that right now, now that the fever of vote buying is catching everyone.
No. You see, after you've casted your votes,
that's right,
you cannot induce anybody anymore. We are all staying in the sun or in the rain. And if you get tired, if a neighbor just offer me, say, oh, I brought this food in my cooler and all of that, would you like to have some? Guy, I'm hungry. And if I trust the person that much, of course, I eat from it. And if I'm able to also buy food and somebody walk up to me and say that they need some food, you share it. You understand? It's part of family living.
We're wrapping up now, and earlier we talked about the need to get a right and most competent candidates, coming out from the primary election of all of these parties. Let me just have your thought on that.
I think the credibility of primaries hinges upon the shoulder or hangs on the shoulder of the state chairman of the respective parties as well as the executive officers. And if you must say it as it is, I think that party chairmen across the respective states must be very responsible. I'm disappointed that you have cases where somebody who has his allegiance over the years with the party is more or less shoved off. And maybe because you feel there's somebody that can listen to you or be moved right and forth, or maybe you just feel, we don't like this person's face, let another person do the job. I know that people who aspire to positions must toe party lines. It's very important. There's no independent candidacy here. So for you to actually aspire to a position, you must learn how to also curry the favor of party leadership.
That's right.
Alongside, because if you do not emerge, the people don't vote for you. So that simply means all of the intertwines, all of the needful that must be done by you must be done. If you look at the peculiar case of Lagos, it is in the open, for instance. I've heard from different sides. I've also read the state government must learn to respect politicians. Politicians understand the nook and cranny. You could have the expertise. If they don't help you get the numbers, nobody votes for you.
That's right.
So you must learn to respect party leadership. You must learn to respect the people who work tooth and nail to bring you there. We did everything, so it's very important.
We're just going to have to wrap it there. Public Affairs Analyst Adewale Ayodele, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
On Osun Votes.
Yes, of course.
Adewale is former chairman of Amuwo Dofin local government area. It's always a pleasure to have you come.
Thanks for having me. And I thank your station. I thank you guys for doing a very wonderful
It's a great opportunity. Thanks.
That's what we do, if I can put it that way. Okay, so it's been a long day, and it's all eyes on Osun State. 48 candidates, amazing figure, at just a single seat. And the big question is, who emerges the next governor of the land of the virtuous? And indeed, the electorate have proven themselves as true Omoluabis thus far in this particular exercise. We're looking forward to hearing more reports, and keep your dial on this channel. The Osun Vote Studio will resume shortly. But that's a wrap for now. And I understand that we'll keep you abreast with what is happening in Osun. On behalf of everyone here, I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Thanks for joining us.